Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Read Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Read Show right here on the Barroom Network. We are streaming live on YouTube, and if you've missed any of our previous shows, you can catch them on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes. Remember to follow us on social media. Follow me at 311Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Read. And, of course, follow at Barroom Network for all the updates, as we're a little earlier than usual today. We have a ton to get to. We're talking Bears, of course, for a majority of this show, coming off that big win against the Patriots, and now preparing, looking ahead for Dallas. That game against the Cowboys should be a fun one as we're riding high after that win against the Pats. Talk about the Robert Quinn trade in depth now. He's a Philadelphia Eagle. The rich get richer as far as the Eagles go, and looks like they're pretty poised to make a deep run as they're one of the best teams. They're still the only undefeated team in the NFL. We'll talk about all the NFL action from this past week as the Bills and Eagles were off, all those top teams. And we'll talk about the Bulls. We'll talk about it all. We'll touch on what we've avoided for a while, Ross, and who's making headlines, Mr. Kanye West or whatever you call him now. We'll briefly touch on it because we've been fans and followed his path for years and years. Surprises along the way, perhaps more takes. I have not caught up on the Thrones, but I know it just ended and people are losing their minds. And how are you, sir? What's going on with you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's another Thursday.
Yeah, Halloween is among us, right?
It's upon us for sure. And let's dive into it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk at the start here, talking about the Bears coming off that big win against the Patriots, 33-14, where no one really expected them to take home a W. I certainly didn't. Ross didn't last week. You're really thinking the worst of this team and how they've been limping through. Just after that performance against the Commanders, you sort of told yourself, man, it's going to be hard to watch any Bears game this season. But look at this, the highest scoring output in a long time as they put up 33 points, as I mentioned. They played to Justin Fields' strengths. The defense was forcing turnovers, looking good. Every phase played well. The big takeaways for me, of course, were where the hell has this offense been all year that was able to beat up on this Bill Belichick coach team. The designed runs were working like a charm to cut up the Pats defense and set up for, screens and whatever else was in the playbook to get Justin Fields in this offense going and put up some points. And in a game where Bill Belichick would have, if he had won, would have surpassed George Halas for second all-time coaching wins because he's still tied with him after that loss. It was like George Halas looked down upon us and said, not today, not today, Bill, against my team. And so that was cool to see. The defense was playing outstanding. That was a huge takeaway, was Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon and how they both got an interception. It's the sign of things to come, hopefully, albeit, playing against some sort of quarter controversy after Mac Jones was benched and Zappi entered the game. But Roquan Smith still making the case for best linebacker in the NFL. He played really well. He led the team in tackles. It's a sack, an interception, terrific stuff. He was all over the field, set the tone. You knew most of the points were going to be field goals, but Cairo Santos couldn't miss. Back to my point about all phases. Just all week leading up to that Monday night game, people were asking me if the Bears had a chance. And, if you asked me last week and we both picked the Bears to lose, of course we thought that it was going to be the worst sort of performance based on how just objectionably bad the offense has been through several weeks of football so far. But every week in the NFL, it's a new opportunity. There's a reason these guys make a 53-man roster, and reason you pad up every week and just give it your best shot. And it was a new opportunity, and they took it. They were just more prepared for the Pats. The only one who predicted the Bears to perform this well, I think, was Bill Belichick when he was praising the Bears in the week leading up to this game. But they were very prepared from coaching down to all those three phases, as I mentioned. It really showed. And what were some takeaways from you after that surprising win, Ross?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the fact that they were just so well prepared, coming out of that mini bye week, was huge to me, right? And so credit to Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy and Alan Williams and the entire coaching staff for coming out there and having this football team prepared from the get-go. That was awesome. I thought that was Luke Getsy's best game. That was the best game plan he's had all season. And he was able to move Justin immediately out of the pocket. He was able to get Justin out on the edge, make some quick throws. I loved all the designed runs that the Bears had. He mentioned after the game that he looked at the tape that the Ravens from the Ravens game against the Patriots a couple weeks before that, where the Ravens just absolutely put it on Bill Belichick's and the Patriots, and he kind of wanted to mimic that a little bit, and he did, and we saw great success. The Bears were able to get the ball out of Justin's hands quickly. The running game was good. Justin had 82 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown on that opening drive. And, that to me was the most important thing in the game, because that's what's going to be the most important thing going forward for the rest of this season, right? The wins and stuff are fun, but seeing Justin Fields take those steps forward week after week and being able to stack drives together and being able to play, in an offense that feels like it's built around him. And yeah, we still have concerns about the wide receivers and we still have concerns about the offensive line, but he showed you on Monday that he is a dynamic athlete and he could be a dynamic player in this league as long as you have a scheme that fits him. I also loved how the whole team bounced back after the Patriots had those 2 touchdowns, right? So, the Bears were up, the Patriots go down, they score 14 straight points, right? And that's when you kind of felt like, uh-oh, this is over. This is about to get ugly. This is classic Bear. But no, the Bears took those punches and they came back and they dominated the rest of that football game. And they caused a very un-Bill Belichick-like decision, which is flipping quarterbacks. And Mac Jones throws an interception to Jaquan Brisker, and Mac Jones is immediately benched, and here comes Bailey Zappi, and Bailey Zappi had the high hand, but then Bailey Zappi looked like shit for the rest of the football game. And now all of a sudden, Bill Belichick has created himself a big issue in New England because he put a spotlight on 2 young men that probably didn't ask for this. And the old saying is, if you have 2 quarterbacks, it means you really don't have one. And now the Patriots have a huge conundrum, because who do you start on Sunday? What happens if that guy throws an interception or 2? You can't keep flip-flopping these guys. You're going to break both of their psyches. You're going to break the team's mentality. And it's really fun to say that the Bears, kind of did that. That they were the ones that broke the mold. You would never think in a million years that Bill Belichick would do something like this. He would pull the trigger on a guy, a la Tom Brady, over Drew Bledsoe, but he would stick with that decision. And so now it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward, because I don't think Bailey Zappi is it either. And if you don't think Mac Jones is it, that's fine. I really don't think Bailey Zappi is it either, which means that both, they've got a bad situation there. But it's cool to see that the Bears did that and see that their defense was able to do that. The 2 young rookies that you said, that was also for them. I think Ryan Poles as a whole had a really good game Monday night, because the 2 rookies that he drafted played well, but also Braxton Jones was able to hold up a lot better. He's one of the highest rated rookie tackles starting this year. And it was just a good win. It's a good feel-good win. And now you go against the Cowboys, who are banged up right now, and you might be able to steal one. And if you get back to 500, who knows? In this crappy NFC, anything can happen. And shout out to Free Girls in Your City in the comments there too.
I was looking at that. Yeah, buddy, that's our sponsors right there. Free Girls in Your City. So, that was pretty surprising to me that Mac Jones was on such a short leash. I get it. He threw 1 interception and he looked relatively ineffective. And then Bailey Zappi looked like he was just going to take over the game, obviously, when he led those two scores. But that's a really good point you brought up, Ross, is a lot of teams will just let that go, and then it's a game of momentum, and will just continue to dig themselves deeper. The Bears did not, and we know that this Bears team certainly looked like it had the making of collapsing after they went down 14-10 in that second quarter. But then they finished the quarter strong to go up 20-14, and then, like you said, dominated the rest of the half. They had more takeaways, and whether it be Cairo Santos or David Montgomery sealing that game with a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was really great to see. It's what you touched on too, and certainly what everybody wants to see is, regardless of wins, is this development of Justin Fields. And looking at the stat line, it wasn't too much different than other games, but obviously, looking at the rushing yards and looking at the crucial plays, like if you watch the Manning cast, like, it's cover zero, it's got a man open, and he took a lick and then still was able to get the ball to Khalil Herbert for a walk-in touchdown, a perfectly designed play for that, which, by the way, should have fucking been roughing the passer. I don't know what these refs are looking at. This continues to be so inconsistent. It's mind-boggling. But for him to stay in the pocket and make that throw was really impressive. Time and time again, he would do that. And still there's those fumbles and still some issues where it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Justin Fields. But you can see he's still it feels like every game he really is making those improvements. And remember, Lucas Patrick going out and Michael Schofield had to step in.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Evan?
I don't know what happened. That was weird.
I was like, you're back. Did we leave?
Like I was talking about, pick up right where we left off.
Yep.
The offensive line shuffling, now Larry Borum in concussion protocol. It's still going to throw a lot of punches at you. And for Justin Fields to step up the way he has repeatedly when he's on the losing end in every game, and coming from behind and playing just elite defenses, and still adjusting to the speed and playing with trash wide receivers for the most part, you see the potential is there. So it's all pointing in the right direction. But it's so great too. I want the Bears to switch, just flip the script, so to speak, from being that defensive minded football team to being what the Eagles are now, what the Bills are now. Bills are so balanced on both sides, but be what Kansas City is, where they just have a offense that can put up 40-some points on any given Sunday. But to see the defense play like they did and have 3 takeaways, especially from the young guys and Roquan Smith, it was great to see them feast on a quarterback that was reeling, and you could see he was sort of out of place. It was a get-right game, right, where you stop the losing streak and you're able to sort of regroup, and now you have another shorter week when you go into Dallas for a pretty tough test against the Cowboys. So it was really great to see overall.
It was great to see. And, to me, to kind of touch on Justin Fields a little bit is, the ringer.com had a great piece earlier this week about the Colts making the change from benching Matt Ryan to starting Sam Ehlinger. And they made the change by basically saying, listen, these running quarterbacks in the league right now, these rushing quarterbacks, they're counting for higher yards per play than your stationary quarterbacks, right? Because they've got the ability to not only get the football down the field with their arm, right, and being able to extend the plays with their arm, make big plays with their arm, and get the ball down the field, but also their legs right now are causing teams to really game plan for that as well, right? And so, there's a stat out there saying right now that Pat Mahomes is the only quarterback in football right now that has a bigger yards per play average than any other quarterback with his arm than any other quarterback. So this sport right now is being dominated by rushing quarterbacks. And if you know that, then why not, as an offensive coordinator, will you use that to your advantage? We see it in Buffalo right now, right? They're the number one team in the AFC because Josh Allen is the point guard of that offense. And we see Lamar Jackson has won an MVP before with his legs and with his arm. And so going forward, it would just be outright stupid for you not to be able to say, I've got this amazing weapon. He can pick up first downs with his legs. He can get me, he is a dynamic weapon in the red zone, which is we talked about last week, using him better in the red zone. And then also he's got a great arm. Why am I not going to be able to use all his tools to that advantage? The days of the quarterback doing the 5-step drop and just sitting back in the pocket and shuffling around, that's over. These guys are getting out of the league right now. Tom Brady is a shell of himself. He will not last. If he lasts this season, I don't know what's going to happen tonight against the Ravens. He's not going to last past this season, right? Matt Ryan has already gotten benched. Ben Roethlisberger is out of the league. And what's the guy that has 19 kids? Phillip Rivers is out of the league. Like, these guys are out of the league right now. Even Matthew Stafford has struggled a little bit. It's a new age quarterback. And you have to embrace it, and you have to run your offense to it. The best thing that can happen for the Bears going forward is that now teams start to put a spy on Justin Fields, because all that does is that takes one more guy away from the secondary and allows your receivers to be able to roam freely. If teams start spying Justin Fields, it's night for defenses, because all of a sudden you've got to account for his legs and the fact that he's got a rocket forearm. That's the kind of thing you want to do. You want these defenses to start to game plan for the fact that this guy is the best and most dynamic athlete on the field. And so I was really happy to see Lou Getsy come out with that performance on Monday night.
Yeah, Ryan Poles was a big fan of that performance. He said, quote, "I know Justin has been a big topic in his development, and we're encouraged with the progress that is there. It's not on the statistics and on the paper all the time, but he is getting better in a lot of different areas. I think as a whole, we've got to continue to play better around him as well, to allow him to keep playing well and get his confidence going and execute at a high level." Only thing I wanted to touch on before we talk about the most recent trade, Robert Quinn, was, what are you seeing in Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker in the secondary now, Ross? Are you seeing this looking like a pretty elite package as advertised now, and these rookies really maturing before your eyes?
Yeah, I think Brisker has been awesome, all season long. He's played every single snap except for the one snap where he got kicked in the nuts on Monday by Mac Jones, who should at the very least be fined for that, because, if that was a defensive player that had that kind of play on a quarterback, that would have been a fine and a possible suspension, but that's a whole other topic. So Jaquan is really comfortable. I thought that Jaquan was very, Jamal Adams-like with better ball skills, even coming out of college and coming into the situation. That's what he's shown to you. He's great around the line of scrimmage. He's got a few sacks already. He's got tackles for loss, and now he's got, the interception to add to his books. He's just going to keep being developed. That guy's a superstar. He's going to be a superstar going forward. What I love about Kyler Gordon is the Bears stopped shifting him around. We talked about this, frequently on the show. He was going from outside to nickel to outside. And for a young corner in the league, that's just too much of a learning curve as a rookie. The Bears, since, over the last couple weeks, have kept him inside. And look what's happened. He's been a dynamic tackler inside. It really started with that Vikings game. He's been a great tackler on the inside. And he has now started to pick up his ball skills. And I think he's getting confidence. And I can only see that increasing going forward. And, that wouldn't happen if we've got to shout out Kendall Vador for a second, because he was a lightning rod topic, especially last year for the Bears and their poor play on defense. He's been outstanding this year on the outside. And because him and Jalen Johnson are those mainstays on the outside and be outstanding, it allows a guy like Kyler Gordon to play on the inside and be comfortable. And he's just a dynamic football player as a nickel position. Allow him to continue to develop there. If that guy plays nickel all the time his whole career, I'm okay with that. Listen, guys like Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams and stuff like that, they line up 60% of the time during the game from the nickel spot, right? So you need good nickel players, and you need guys that can also support the run and tackle as well. So shout out to Brisker and Gordon. I hope they can continue to develop, because right now everybody talks about it should have been George Pickens, or it should have been Alec Pierce, or it should have been Christian Watson and all these other wide receivers. But it's very realistic that Gordon and Brisker are going to come out to be better football players than all three of those guys. And if that happens, that's a win for Ryan Poles.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. So you've seen the Bears trending in the right direction now at this point, and still looking ahead to next year. As I told you what Ryan Poles had to say about Justin Fields, he has some issues within his own organization where he has to think about cap space and think about where this team is headed and who to cut ties with, who who to keep, and we knew he was on the trading block, the most likely guy in Robert Quinn, and he played his last game in a Bears uniform on a Monday nighter and went out a winner, and so now he's a Philadelphia Eagle in exchange for a 4th-round draft pick. And I just immediately, when I heard that too, I was like, boy, he's going to be chasing Justin Fields up and down the field when they play the Eagles later this season. But both teams announced the terms of the trade yesterday afternoon, pending Quinn passing the physical, which I'm sure he will. But it frees up a lot of cap space. I mean, the 4th-round pick, I think, is pretty maximum. I mean, pretty maximum value when I've thought about it over and over again. And it just makes too much sense for them to do it. And the ripple effect, obviously these are people and it's so tough to see. You saw Roquan Smith, tearing up at the podium when he was talking about the impact that Robert Quinn had. And certainly he had one of his best seasons as a Chicago Bear. He was just a season or two removed from that. And a guy who you could certainly get behind as a pass rusher, like not no frills, like not going out with gloves or anything, not taped up, just goes, and an old school sort of feeling from a pass rushing standpoint. So they'll miss that, certainly his impact, because he was, whether it was Zappe or Mac Jones, he was making his impact felt repeatedly. But I mean, you gotta start doing what these other teams have done when they've been at the bottom, and that's pooling draft picks and freeing up that space to continue to prepare for next year and beyond and build around Justin Fields.
Yeah, and absolutely. And listen, Robert Quinn, 32 years old. He's going on 33 years old. He's been in the league now for over 10 years. He's had a great career, but he doesn't fit into the Bears timeline right now, right? Which is, this team is looking to really, really, really compete. Probably not next year, but maybe the year before. If it happens a year early, I wouldn't be surprised, right? But you're probably looking 2 years from now where this team is really looking to compete and be a Super Bowl contender. So because of that, along with his cap hit and the fact that, let's be honest, he only had 1 sack this year, it wasn't quite the production from last year. You really needed to move on from him. You need to, what the Bears did was they essentially bought a draft pick, right? They're picking up the rest of his contract and they're going to pay that, but they accumulate the cap space for it, which is really important because the Bears have, over $120 million to play with next year in cap space, and they need a lot to add to this roster. But you pick up an extra 4th-round pick, and that's really important right now because, you said you hit it on the head. Ryan Poles has to fill in some needs and some holes for this roster, right? You figure, even in the first 2 rounds, you're going to be looking for, possibly an offensive tackle and possibly a wide receiver, right? But you still need a good 3 technique. You need a good 3 technique defensive, tackle. You don't know what you're going to do with Cody White here. You definitely need a center because, good God, Mustaford and Patrick have been awful all year, right? You're going to need, possibly another corner for some depth. And Jackson, you're going to need more wide receivers, right? Because the guys that you have right now most likely aren't going to be on the roster. And you can continue to find rotational defensive ends for this system, right? So, we've seen like Dominic Robinson this year has had a great, he's a 5th-round pick this year, and he's been a good rotation guy. Well, guess what? He gets more snaps now that Robert Quinn is gone, right? And then you're going to be able to see Travis Gibson get the majority of those snaps, that's a guy that could be a piece, going forward for you, right? So, as much as it sucks to say goodbye to a good quality veteran like Robert Quinn, you just had to do it. He didn't fit in the timeline right now. I'd rather see guys like Angelo Blackson, get on there. I'm not a big Al-Qadim Muhammad guy. I think that's kind of a bust of a signing.
It has been 1 sack so far, 7 tackles.
Yeah, absolutely. But I really want to see Travis Gibson get all of those snaps really going forward, right? I really want to see him get out on the football field and take a ton of snaps. I'm a huge Travis Gibson fan, and I think he has a lot of high potential to be a good pass rusher in this league right now. But anytime you get a 4th-round pick for that guy and accumulate the cap space, good move. Good move. I support it.
You could have traded a bit higher if you had done it, weeks ago or in the offseason, probably. But the bottom line is it makes the most sense for this team going forward. And I know we answered a lot of the questions in the comments as far as who replaces Robert Quinn, and Muhammad has not been as advertised, Eberflus's guy. But this whole defensive line is going to be in flux. It's probably going to look very different come next year. But, you see the depth there, and you talked about all the needs going into the offseason. But right now, Dallas is next, Ross. And Cowboys aren't completely healthy. Dak is coming. He's come back now, so he's still getting back into the swing of things, I feel like. And Zeke said he'll try to play this Sunday. Obviously, when you're playing in Jerry's world, it's a hostile atmosphere, but I feel like they're reeling at this point. And NFC East has been playing tough. And you saw, if any indication, the Bears playing against the Commanders and the Giants, how that's going to go. Got beat pretty soundly by the Giants. But what kind of chance do you see for one against them, Bears against the Cowboys? And then what do you want to see?
Yeah, so in going back to the whole Robert Quinn thing, I have to give a shout out to our good buddy from the Barroom Network. God damn,
Gotta get
Greg,
his name.
Yeah, I know. Greg Gabriel, of course. Greg Gabriel, of course, who was former scout for the Chicago Bears, and him and I DM each other all the time. He's a great guy. We talk about anything from football to grilling and stuff like that. But he always said, keep an eye out on Jonathan Kingsley, who came over from the Buffalo Bills, and I think Kingsley is a good rotational defensive end that's going to be able to get some snaps now that Quinn is gone. But looking forward to this football game right here. I watched a lot of that Cowboys game last weekend against the Lions, and the Lions have one of the worst defenses in the league, and the Cowboys really struggled to move the football. Dak Prescott looked very, very rusty coming back off that thumb injury, and it just didn't look good. Their offensive line is kind of struggling a little bit. Now they've got Zeke Elliott probably missing this football game because he's banged up, which means that you're down one of your best weapons on offense. Tony Pollard is no slouch. I think Tony Pollard is a great football player. But if Dak Prescott is still not in a groove yet coming off of that thumb injury, the Bears can put a little bit of pressure on him and be able to get to that, be able to get the football. I think now this secondary is playing with a lot of confidence right now, and they're going to be able to try and attack the football and get some takeaways from Dak Prescott. On the offensive side of things, boy, it would be really nice if Micah Parsons does not play on Sunday. I know he sat out of practice again today, so now it's kind of trending in a weird direction with him. I still think that he would play on Sunday, but even if he's at 50% or he's on the field for only 50% of the time, that's a huge win for the Bears because they're going to be, it looks like right now Larry Borum is going to miss the football game. He's got a concussion, which means Riley Reef is going to step in. Is going to be the right tackle. You're looking at right now your new offensive line. Off the top of my head is going to be Braxton Jones, Michael Schofield, Sam Mustipher, Tevin Jenkins, and Riley Reef are going to be your 5 guys that you're going to see on Sunday, which means you get yet another new offensive line, combination, which, 5 guys will always tell you up front, they like continuity, right? They like to. So I expect for Luke Getsy again to continue to get the football out of Justin's hands quickly, try and establish the run early on, right? Van Der Esch is a guy that you're going to have to key on, but if the Bears won this football game, it wouldn't be shocking to me. And you ask, what's the result that you want? I'm at the point right now where I think in the NFL, I'm not a fan of tanking. I think that you can get just as quality of a good football player at pick number 16 or 17 as you can at pick number 5, right? Look at where guys like, Justin Jefferson were drafted at, and some of the better wide receivers in the league, and some of the better offensive linemen in the league, the true needs of the Bears. Look where they were drafted at. And I think if this team went, 7-10 or something like that, they could still get a quality football player there. To me, it's more important that Justin Fields continues to stack good performances. And if that means that they go out there and they win on Sunday because Justin Fields had a great game, I will. I'm not gonna be pissed off at that. I can't be. That's the most important thing.
And you start to develop on in every phase. I mean, certainly offensive and defensively as you play better competition. I think there's a lot to be said with this schedule as they get into later into the season too, as we're basically mid-season at this point now. And like I talked about, Dak being back is huge for the Cowboys, and I think that'll propel them offensively. If you're Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker and the rest of that secondary, you're keying up on CeeDee Lamb and whoever else lines up against you because they have a pretty deep receiving core as far as the Cowboys go. And then you talked about, reigning defensive player of the year, Micah Parsons, and what a threat he is and how he is a guy who can keep Justin Fields in check for sure alone. And then the Dallas defense can work up front with that. So what they're going to key on if you're Dallas is obviously that rotating offensive line that has changed yet again. It's another combination. We'll end this year probably with 8 different line combos, it seems like. But it's next man up, and that's, as we've seen, season-ending injury after season-ending injury. Without Zeke Elliott, Pollard can step in just as easily. He's done it before. So long story short, I certainly see I'm going to be still pessimistic in that the Bears will lose, but they're not going to tank. They're certainly going to line up and they're going to play their best 4 quarters of football that they can. They're just still not at that level that I think Dallas is at. And watch me be wrong, right? If you can continue to roll and build on those strengths that you're starting to develop, like those running plays for Justin Fields, and maybe these wide receivers take those next steps. But he's also, pretty predictable in that this Bears team, if you do key against the run and force Justin Fields to pass, he's pretty mistake prone still too, and he doesn't have a lot of time in the pocket. He just obviously had a better game plan behind him against a Patriots team, and that defense bailed him out a lot. So I think it'll be a much tougher test, certainly from the defensive standpoint, against Dak Prescott. And then Justin Fields, we'll see if he can continue some of this momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, listen, kind of in the last minute on Monday, I took the Bears. They were plus 8.5 to win to cover. And I didn't take them on the money line, but I picked them to cover because I think that this is a better football team than plus 8.5 was laying. I just did not trust the Patriots, right? And so you look at this game coming in on Sunday, and the Cowboys are 9.5-point favorites. And I still think that's disrespectful. I'm sorry. I know the Cowboys are a good football team, right? But I just don't think the Bears are 9.5-point dogs to the Cowboys. I think they're able to keep this game closer. So anytime I see those big lines like that, for a football team that doesn't have the Bears aren't like Texans bad or anything like that. There's a lot of bad football teams in the league. I don't think the Bears are quite at that level. I start to kind of, you kind of start to peak a little bit and you're like, listen, plus 9.5 is looking really good. I'm going to take that plus 9.5 personally on Sunday. But if you want to throw a little money line on there, I ain't mad at you, right? Because that smells like another upset game. Bears are plus 345 on the money line right now. We all know $10 to get you 34.5 bucks there. But you want to put a little bit more on that, I'm not mad at you. I think the Bears can keep this game close, and if they can, I like their special teams. I like their defense to potentially be able to steal one in Dallas. Also, remember, orange jerseys are coming back this Sunday.
Yes, sir.
Cowboys are in their blue jerseys for a rare time. They're usually in the white jerseys, so we get to see blue jerseys on this Sunday from the Cowboys. And very much so like the Bears stopping Bill Belichick from passing George Halas on Monday, the Cowboys at halftime are honoring Emmitt Smith for passing Walter Payton for the all-time rushing title, right? What better way than to see that than the Bears kind of avenge the great Walter Payton, rest in peace, Walter Payton, and go out there and beat the Cowboys. So it's possibly a big game on the ground from David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert with the rushing theme. But I think the Bears will keep it close.
I would hope so. I'm just hoping for something close. You're seeing in the comments, Ron just said 38-10 Bears win. If the Bears score 30 again, and if they lose, I'm not mad at that. If they can continue to put up points, because this is such a points happy league, obviously you got to put up 30 to 40 a week to be with these contenders, with the Chiefs and the Bills and Eagles, these types of teams. Mm-hmm. I'm all for it, but we shall see what happens as they match up against the Cowboys in this Sunday matchup. But we got to recap more of this last week too, as we look ahead to Week 8. Week 7 had some action. As I mentioned, the Bills were out, and the Vikings and the Eagles were on byes. But it was more of the same as far as the Chiefs. Another huge win. They were pouring it on the Niners. The Bengals are righting the ship a bit, but then just when they are, Jamar Chase, he's out with a hip injury for 4 to 6 weeks. We just heard today. Jets and the Giants keep rolling. Like you said, the NFC is pretty wide open right now. And then there's the two main teams in the Bills and the Chiefs as far as AFC and everybody else. But Jets and Giants keep rolling. New York football is coming on strong. But we've talked about it before, but my takeaway is still is on the losing end. It really feels in the NFC that the biggest story is that the Bucks and Packers struggles, and Tom Brady and the Bucks only scoring 3 against the Christian McCaffrey-less Panthers was pretty surprising. I don't think anybody predicted that, just like the Bears were not predicted to come anywhere close to winning against the Pats, but any given Sunday. And then Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay lost to Washington. That was also pretty surprising. But you've seen the tail of the tape throughout this year thus far, and you got the 2 number 12s where they're both aging. They, Tom Brady at least has had wide receiver injuries to his top weapons, and certainly offensive line influx has not helped him stay upright. And you saw it all come to a head this last Sunday where they only mustered 3 points. But then Aaron Rodgers, now he's just getting to be bitter Aaron Rodgers that Bears fans love to see, as they were on the losing end against Washington. But the Bucks have the advantage, I guess, when you're looking in the long term, when they still want to hold on some playoff aspirations. Excuse me. The Bucks play in a division where no team has a winning record. They're still at the top. And then Rodgers and co have the Vikings to compete with. But what else, Ross? What would you see from week 7?
New York teams, not in counting New York City teams, excuse me. This isn't even counting Buffalo, but
I didn't say New York City. Yeah, New York, greater New York. Yeah.
New York City teams are 11-3 this season, excuse me. Right. So the Giants are 6-1 right now, and the Jets are 5-2. Shout out to both of those head coaches for kind of riding the ship there and doing well. I thought the Chiefs really made a statement against the 49ers, and for them to be able to put 44 points on the board. Pat Mahomes had 423 yards, and then he just got Kadarius Toney today, traded from the Giants to the Chiefs, so he gets another new toy to play with. Right, it was a McCall Hardman breakout game. I think that was a huge statement win for them,
and Juju. Yeah.
And Juju, yep, absolutely. So the Chiefs are trying to right the ship a little bit, and they're trying to show teams, even though we lost to Buffalo the week before, we're still going to be there at the end, and we can still put some points on the board. What Seattle's doing is just downright impressive to me. Shout out to Geno Smith. He's got to be most improved. I don't know what the hell the NFL does. Is it most improved player of the year? Is it a comeback player? Whatever it is, give it to Geno Smith, please, because he's just been awesome this year. I think it's such a fun story. I love watching them play. I love, Pete Carroll. I mean, he was right? You look at all the goofy shit that Russell Wilson is doing. He's doing high knees on an airplane to London. First off, if I ever see anybody on an international flight, and I've taken a few in my lifetime, do some fucking high knees at when you're trying to cross the Atlantic Ocean to get to overseas, and you're already going to be jet lagged, I'm going to punch you in the face. Anytime I'm on an international flight, here's what it entails. The cheapest bottle of wine that you can give me, a good trilogy, because you need all 3 movies at the same time. I'd say maybe Lord of the Rings or The Matrix.
Oh my God.
Something like that, right? Lethal Weapon is a good one as well. And then you just watch bad movies until you fall asleep, and you put the little eye mask on, and you wake up, and then you can have some tea and crumpets. But if you're doing fucking high knees on an airplane when you're going overseas, I'm going to punch you in the goddamn face. I digress. And now you got a London game for those guys, and that could be Nathaniel Hackett, find your own way home flight, because if they lose that football game, I think he is one and done. I think they might fire him in the season. Some other standouts for me is a very costly win for the Bengals, because we heard what happened with Jamar Chase today. He could potentially miss anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks to the season. And I don't know what's going to happen with that team if they don't have that guy out there. That is a huge, huge blow to that team. And then, finally, we got to go all the way back to Thursday night. But I thought the Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury thing is so bizarre to me, because it looks like these guys freaking hate each other with a passion. They're yelling at each other in the sidelines. Yet that was a huge win for them. They get 40 points in that game, thanks to Andy Dalton throwing five touchdowns. He's doing touchdowns to you and to you and to them and to everybody else. But it's the Cliff and Kyler thing to me. I watch every Sunday or every time they're on just to watch those two and see them yelling at each other in the dynamic. So, those are a couple of things that stood out to me. Going forward to week 8 now, I can't wait for week 8. Obviously, we got the Bears game. pull up the schedule here because I already kind of forgot about what we got for week 8. I know we got some good matchups.
I got you, Ross. So it all kicks off tonight, and certainly, we haven't even talked. We've talked about how important it is to, for the Buccaneers to bounce back and have them have a good game against the Ravens. That's tonight on Amazon. We know that we love the Thursday night matchups, but yeah, there's going to be some huge games. Cardinals, Vikings. You just talked about how the Cardinals had a huge game against the Saints, and then Patriots, Jets going to continue to roll here. And then as we get into the teams that are kind of struggling to hold on to any semblance of hope for playoffs and save their season, Eagles looking to remain undefeated against the Steelers, and then 49ers, Rams, and then Giants, Seahawks. Like we talked about, Seahawks have been so good as far as what they've been able to do without Russell Wilson. And I'll talk about the Broncos in a moment too. But the Sunday nighter, look at Packers and Bills, man, and Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what kind of performance he has. Now, also talking about injuries, Alan Lazard isn't going to suit up for that Sunday nighter. But what else are you looking at, Ross?
Yeah, and the Packers are going to get their ass kicked on Sunday night. That's a gimme. I look at like Raiders Saints. That's probably like a loser leaves town game. I think the loser of that football game is probably you could kiss the playoffs goodbye. With that situation. Cardinals Vikings, very interesting game because again, the Vikings right now sit atop the NFC North. But again, I think the Cardinals are just a weird team. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals went in there and beat them, right? And just because it's just such a weird team that you can't game plan for. Outside of that, the marquee matchup to me is the 49ers and the Rams. And that's why they put that game on the Fox 325 game. We know that the 49ers always play the Rams very, very tough. I think that the 49ers have a lot of pressure on them right now coming off of that Christian McCaffrey trade and everything that they gave up for him. Now it's like, okay, you're trying to really go for it and win a Super Bowl. But if you lose back-to-back games and they have a lot of injuries right now, what was the point? What was the purpose, right? And so they're going to go out there and they're going to try and really take it to the Rams, who, right now the 49ers are the favorites to win that division, but the Rams are going to kind of, hang in there and see if they can take it. They get Van Jefferson back this week, I believe, who hasn't played all year. He had an injury. Remember Van Jefferson, who was great all for them last year. There's their slot receiver. He was the guy that ran off the field at the end of the Super Bowl last year because his wife was having a baby, and he had to go visit her in the hospital. She was in labor. But if they can add him to that offense, I'm sure Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford appreciate that because Cooper Kupp is probably absolutely exhausted. But yeah, there's going to be another fun week of football. I'm going to be passing out candy in addition to watching football. Our trick-or-treating is going on around here Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, it's a good time.
Yes, sir. Another week of football. I'll say too, on the note of what team would you rather not be? The Broncos, man. I've talked about it every week, and overpaying Russell Wilson at this point, just oodles of money to put up 9 points they had against who did they play last week? Against the Jets. I mean, the Jets, like we talked about, are a good football team, and they just lost Breece Hall, but 16-9, it's unbelievable. I would certainly rather be the Bears at this point with a young Justin Fields behind them and all this cap space doing for them. But the Broncos and these billionaire owners don't look like they know how to run a football team.
They don't. Well, the funny thing is, they didn't inherit that situation. They're the Walmart heirs, right? And so that tells you a lot about the situation because screw Walmart for a variety of different reasons. But it looks like a huge mistake. I think for them to right the ship, you're married to Russell Wilson now for at least a couple years going forward. You're not going to be able to get out of that contract situation. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett is it. I think he's got to go. I think that he was a guy that was hired before that the new ownership, situation went through. So they're not married to him. They would rather pay Nathaniel Hackett to go away than to see Russell Wilson continue to fail in this situation. So I think Wilson will be gone. A name that I would keep an eye out for, you want to say Sean Payton, but you have to trade for him from the Saints because he's still technically on the contract with them. They gave up all their draft picks to get Russell Wilson. So I think he's out of the question for them. So, I would look at Darrell Bevell, and Darrell Bevell was the offensive coordinator back in Seattle when Russell Wilson had all of his success. And he was the guy that was, kind of running the show from the offensive side of things when they went to their Super Bowl runs. And Darrell Bevell right now is the quarterback coach down for the Dolphins. And he's a guy that's been working with Tua, and he's also the passing game coordinator because we know their head coach, Mike McDaniel, down there ran the running game for the 49ers. That's a guy I think I would look at that, would be a potential fit for the Broncos going forward, because he knows Russell Wilson the best out of anybody. And I think he will tailor the whole situation to get Russell Wilson back on track. And he wouldn't cost a lot of money because you're going to be paying a head coach to go away on Nathaniel Hackett, and you're going to have to bring a guy like Bevel in on the cheap to be able to kind of right the ship a little bit.
All right. Sage advice from Ross. We talked a lot about NFL, and like I said, Bucks and Ravens should be a good one tonight. But hey, the same night where the Bears beat the Pats, the Bulls beat the Celtics. I gotta say, the side note is beating Green Bay, which is so rare, is awesome. Beating any Detroit team is the tits. But I so thoroughly enjoy beating any Boston team, that spoiled ass fan base, whenever Chicago gets the chance. So it was doubly exciting for them to beat the Pats, for the Bears to beat the Pats, and then Bulls to beat the Celtics. It's super early on the Bulls note, but the Bulls have looked mostly sharp. I think now that Levine's back, you're seeing that backcourt is as good as advertised, and with Caruso and Kobe White playing pretty well, and DeRozan and Levine show, and it's pretty much a fun crapshoot of whoever else is going to show up. And where Vooch had a crazy stat line against the Celtics, but then came back down to earth against the Pacers yesterday. But you could see the potentials there. You seen anything that surprised you thus far with the Bulls, Ross?
I would say, unfortunately for me, the biggest surprise is how much of a disappointment Patrick Williams has been.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I was hoping would take a big leap this year going forward, and he just hasn't done it. Thankfully, Ayo Dosunmu has, and he's kind of taken the reins a little bit as a starting point guard. He had a good game last night against the Pacers, and hopefully he can continue to develop going forward. Great game from Zach LaVine yesterday. I think that was his first game of the season where he felt like he had his sea legs underneath him, and he kind of responded. He hit like 6 threes yesterday and had an awesome game. You hope that Zach can continue to be better and continue to stay on the court and not miss games due to any kind of knee soreness or anything like that. But I hope this Bulls team can continue to stack wins early on, and we hope that Lonzo Ball can come back at some point this season, and maybe they can make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. I still think that they're not as good as like the Milwaukee Bucks of the world or the Boston Celtics of the world. But listen, it would still be fun if they're able to make a little bit of a run as like anywhere between a 4 or 5 seed in the playoffs and maybe win a series or two. But most importantly, you got to get Patrick Williams on track, man. You got to find a way to get this young man some confidence and get to a way that he feels comfortable on the court. He didn't even have a rebound yesterday in yesterday's game. This guy's a starting power forward out on the court. That's just unacceptable in my opinion. That's just a complete lack of confidence and awareness for him right now.
That's a big hole in that Bulls team and that Bulls roster. I'm not sure what the fix is or what's going on with Patrick Williams, where he showed you thought that the health issue was what was holding him back. But if he's playing these games, he's got to get quality minutes. And if you're doing anything else, at least rebound the ball, for God's sakes. Pretty wild. But at least the Bulls are not the Lakers at 0-4 right now. And certainly I also wanted to touch on how the Cavs are going to have the Central Division's number too. When you're looking at the Bucks and the Bulls, how they're both trying to jockey for that number 1 spot. The Cavs made all the right offseason moves and have a lot of youth. And you saw it when the Bulls played them just this past Saturday, and they just put a hurting on them. But yeah, other NBA notes. I know I love the chippiness of the Warriors and Suns game. Do you see, the only other basketball note that I had was, do you see sort of this regression from the Warriors? I mean, everybody's gunning for them, obviously, because they're the dynasty of this decade. But do you see what people are seeing here with some sort of regression, Ross?
No, I don't see it. Steve Kerr started at the beginning of the year saying, listen, I'm not going to play these guys 35, 40 minutes a game. I'm gonna ease them into the season. I'm gonna use our depth to kind of rest my starters, and that's kind of what he's doing right now. Steve Kerr has done this a lot. He's got a lot of championships as a player and as a coach, and he knows that this is a marathon, not a sprint. He needs guys to be healthy going into April and May and June, and doesn't really matter right now, right? So listen, we know the Warriors are going to make the playoffs, and we know they're going to be probably a top 3 seed. And for Steve Kerr, that's all that matters to him right now, right? Because the Suns are going to go for it. The Suns feel like they've got a lot to prove, and that's awesome until Chris Paul and his old ass breaks down in February and March, and he misses like his usual 2
Like
months of the
clockwork.
season. Absolutely, he loses, his usual 2 months of the season, or Kawhi Leonard does a Kawhi Leonard thing and he disappears for a month and a half and doesn't play basketball, right? So the Warriors are playing this smart. They're just easing into the season. They'll turn it on at some point. They'll have one of those typical classic Warriors win 10 games in a row stretch. I fully expect for them to be there at the end of the season. I picked them in the Bucks to go to the NBA Finals because I think they have the best rosters, and I think they have the best 2 players that I want in the playoffs going forward. And so I'm not going to back off of that, certainly at this early point in the season.
Yes, sir. It's very early on, and certainly those 2 teams, and then the Warriors and the Suns look like they're the class of the NBA still, and of the Western Conference. But boy, it's getting bad in Laker Town. that's for damn sure. Ross, we teased it at the beginning, and we'll briefly touch on this before more fun stuff. But it's been weeks ongoing with this, and we've let it kind of slide by because obviously we're keeping this more sports centric, a lot to talk about. But as 2 Chicago guys who are big fans of his music, we got to touch on Kanye. And now, ever since the George Bush doesn't care about black people bit, I knew that Kanye wasn't going to censor himself, but he's just taken it to a whole nother level where he's trying really hard to just lose all his endorsements and tank his business dealings. The shit has hit the fan after the anti-Semitic comments. Adidas dropped him, Balenciaga, CAA dropped him, his talent agency. Foot Locker and Gap won't sell his products. Jaylen Brown and Aaron Donald left on to sports. He was escorted out of the Skechers office when he showed up unannounced to their LA office, which is a bad look amongst pretty much everything from this whole month. This whole month has just gotten progressively worse since the White Lives Matter shirts, for that matter, too. Him not now having a record company and or publishing deal begs the question, how will he release music? I don't know if he had anything. I'm sure he had something in the can, down to 3 or whatever, but they're painting over murals of him here in Chicago. He's essentially getting canceled, more or less, and he's alienated just every demographic that you can think of, except for, obviously pro-Nazis and and Trump people, which is not the groups you want to be in cahoots with. But most people with sense and decency is alienated. Excuse me. A lot of folks are asking the same thing. I just have one question: is can he come back from this? And I really don't see how.
You know what? So here's my take on Kanye West: is I think he's got a severe mental illness, and I think he's had that severe mental illness for probably most of his life. I think that his mother was the one that kind of stabilized it. And when she passed away, shit kind of hit the fan a little bit, and has increasingly hit the fan for a very long time. This has been a long time in the making. But, and here's a big but, is I think that society has enabled that mental illness for a long time. And society he's been saying outlandish shit his entire life. He's done outlandish shit. And instead of, turning him off or ignoring him, we have fed into it. He's gotten more money, and he's gotten more clicks, and he's sold shoes, and he sold this, and he sold that. But to me, the thing that has irritated me the most over the years is people, when I think that he's been at his worst mentally, is when I think people have stuck microphones in front of him even more. And that's been frustrating to me, is because I think that there are a lot of people profiting off of his mental illness. We saw Noriega do an interview with him on Drink Champs a couple of weeks ago, and that got a ton of backlash. And at the beginning, Noriega was like, I got 2 million clicks. And that's what I'm saying, is like, when he goes on these rants, people are very quick to put a microphone in front of him because it gets them money and it gets them views, and it increases their viewership and stuff like that. And even people on social media, they can't stop talking about him. They can't stop writing stories about him and doing this. He makes people a lot of money in his downfall. And that's what I don't like, is I don't like to be a part of a society where we can clearly see he's got a huge mental illness. But instead of turning him off and then saying, okay, can we please get somebody to help this man? I'm saying right now, because I personally think that he could be on suicide watch. You know what I'm saying? Like he could be that unstable. Instead, we continue to talk about him, make jokes about him, put a microphone in his face, and just completely dismiss. Probably the most important thing is this man is severely mentally ill, and you wouldn't do that if you saw some guy in the street. You wouldn't do all these things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always remember. I always make the analogy is, Vincent Van Gogh cut his ear off, right? The guy's a genius, cut his ear off. He had mental illness issues. If Vincent Van Gogh painted Starry Night in 2022 and he cut his ear off, we'd put him on a podcast tomorrow, or we'd had him on Tucker Carlson talking about how'd you cut your ear off, and that's bullshit to me. These people have mental illnesses, and the way we react to it as a society is very frustrating for me.
It's a toxic society that we're in, and it reminds you of when he said slavery was a choice and barged into the TMZ office, and then Van Lathan gave him second chance over and over again, but then he had seen like signs of this crazy shit that Kanye's been saying, like pro-Nazi stuff coming out. At that point, the bottom line is he seriously, I agree with you, Ross, and I had this conversation with many people about it, is since his mother died, there hasn't really been that presence to keep him in check and that comfort to help him get mentally right. Whatever he's done musically has progressed, and most recent stuff, love it or not, but he still has a lot left in the tank when he is, whether he's producing or whether he's rapping. Still, obviously, a lot of young rappers and producers would look up to him and that art form. So it's just frustrating to see this guy, go and say these things, and then it's one thing to just completely condemn him, but at this point, the Kardashians need to step in. His inner circle needs to step in. They need to try and save the person. Like, he's still going to have money. He's going to be fine. He has a lot of royalties. He has like steak and Skims. He's going to be okay. And he doesn't care about money, clearly, but they need to intervene essentially and try to get him right at this point.
In my opinion, it's like, I'm watching TMZ. I saw TMZ, on Twitter today, and they were like, Delonte West got arrested again. And I'm like, okay, fine. He's fucking mentally ill. Like, why is that news to me? Because he once played basketball for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You've got to tell me that a guy who's mentally ill got arrested. Like, you're profiting off of the fact that, that he's in a turmoil right now, in a downfall, right? To me, here's what I want with Kanye West, is I actually want all of us to stop talking about him for a while. And I want him to go away for, I don't care if it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years, get some help, get some mental health. You've got a family, you've got kids, right? Because, all of a sudden your oldest daughter, she's old enough to see this and see what's going on. So now I start to worry about her mental health, right? Who worries about the mental health of Northwest and stuff like that while you're putting her father's name through the mud and stuff like that? But I want him to... Yeah, it's ironic because he has a song in his last album called Off the Grid, and I want him to go completely off the grid for a few years. And if at some point he comes back down the line 2 years later and he is in a much better mental state, then come on back and we can figure it out. We have, as a society, forgiven a lot worse people, especially when mental health is involved.
You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway. Because
this one's still the best interviews of all time.
It's still really good. He has some outstanding clips. But yeah, just go get yourself right. What I mean to say in clips, asking the Kardashians for mental help. I'm just saying, like, any family, anybody who really cares about him, because also in the comments, when the vultures smell the money and smell someone weak like this, then they're going to start to kick you while you're down, and it's going to be a really steep slope, and someone's just got to try and catch him. And he's a human being at the end of the day. There are some redeemable qualities, and we have forgiven a lot of worse things from celebrities and artists. That's for damn sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Parting thoughts, Ross?
Happy Halloween to everybody. Just a heads up, if you are coming to my house for candy this weekend, I will scare the shit out of you. If you're going to get some free candy out of me, at least be prepared for the fog machine and the music and the lights and some skeletons and all that stuff. It's not quite like the set of Saw. Like it's going to be more PG-13. But just so you know, if I'm giving you free candy, expect your 5-year-old little Timmy. He's going to be a little frightened coming up the stairs, just a little bit. I'm not going to scare him too much, but tell your kid to sack up if he wants some Butterfinger out of me this weekend. Otherwise, I wish everybody nothing but the best. Be safe. Barbarian is streaming on HBO Max, which was a great horror movie that was out in theaters a couple weeks ago. I am going to probably pour a nice glass of bourbon tomorrow night and watch that and really get into the spirit.
That a boy, as you're passing out fucking candy corn at your house. I'm going to avoid it. We got Science Fiction coming up later tonight on the Barroom Network. That's at 9 p.m. Central Time. And thanks for the Barflies chiming in. Anybody who's listening, we're going to be out partying in Rosemont next Saturday, November 5th at King's in Rosemont. 2 p.m. Central Time. That should be a fun celebration as it's scrolling at the bottom of your screen. But I echo everything Ross said. Be safe out there, but have fun. You gotta be a little scared during Halloween. It's not just all hilarious costumes or scary costumes. Come on now. But yeah, remember to follow us on Twitter. Follow me at 311Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Read. Check all our previous shows out on the Barroom Network, either on this YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your media. Follow.
Hit the like button.
Hit that like button for sure. At Barroom Network on Twitter. For now, we say deuces. Be good to each other out there. So long, everybody.
Good night.